Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're getting honest about the hard parts of parenting teens. What are the struggles? What do we wish someone would have told us? And when does the roller coaster ride end? Join us as we share what we learned launching our older kids and what we're still learning raising our younger ones. Parenting teens can be lonely, and we hope you're encouraged as we walk this road together. Let's get started. Hi, Mindy.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Marie.
Listeners, today we're going to talk about the loneliness of being a parent in the teen years. And let's be honest, it's hard. As rewarding as it is to see our kids becoming more independent and developing into real people, it's also got its downsides. Am I right, Julie and Mindy?
Oh, absolutely.
You're so right.
So we're going to be talking about the downsides today, and anyone listening should not take this as we think our teen years were miserable, but we're just going to we just want to speak to the downsides today because I think so many times as parents we're afraid to maybe mention them. But Mindy, you sent us an article this week called Parents of Teens Are All Lying. We're Not Okay. And we're going to link to this in our show notes, listeners, if you want to go and check it out. But Mindy, what appealed to you about this when you saw it?
It actually really surprised me how many of my friends were sharing this article, and then the type of friend that was sharing the article. And the reason I say that is because the friends that were sharing are friends that are actually very encouraging and uplifting and excited about the teen years. And I hadn't really seen any, negative comments from them in the past. They're not those typical kind of naysayers. I noticed that the article gave them a voice of something they had not expressed before.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying by sharing the article, they're saying, this really resonates with me. I am struggling with this. I don't talk about it. In fact, pretty much you haven't heard me talk about it, which I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm lonely, and this is hard.
Right. Julie, what did you think about when you read it?
Yeah, it resonated with me too. It is hard. You're not as free to talk about the issues because they're not just your issues anymore. Like when the kids were little, to talk about them is maybe to admit failure on your part, or at least that's the way you perceive it. So yeah, it can be a lonely time.
She writes, and so often I just want to yell, is anyone else experiencing this madness? What am I supposed to do? Help me out here, because it seems like all your kids are just fine, and we're a hot mess today, my friends. And I think that's how we all feel in our heads. And I find that if someone is honest and admits maybe that they're struggling, I am immediately drawn to that person. Because I feel like, we can be kindred spirits together.
And we tend to compare the best of everyone else with our worst. So it's never a fair comparison.
So it's definitely something that we all deal with. And we just thought that we would talk today about some of the issues that we maybe have struggled with in the teen years. Julie, have you ever been lonely parenting your teens? You are out of the teen years, so you can kind of look back on it with probably more honesty than Mindy and I can because we're still living it.
Right.
Well, it's also like childbirth. I've forgotten a lot of it and think, those were such fun years. No, but some things do stick in my mind. And like I said earlier, it's just maybe a fear of admitting failure on our part. I think mom guilt is a real thing. When we see our kids struggling, it's easy to blame ourselves or to think, what am I doing wrong? Because after all, we're the ones raising these people, right? So I always found myself questioning a lot, like, did I do this too much? Not enough. Oh, what if I'd noticed blank sooner?
Right.
Just kind of always bringing it back to myself. So it was important to have people that I could trust and talk with about my kids regularly. And you just have to. You have to have somebody that you can talk with. And that's really hard because you want to respect your kids' privacy and their story. But I think my kids knew. I had a group of moms that I met with regularly and prayed with, a small group. And I told them, I said, being a mom is hard and I want to respect that. But your privacy, but I can't just hold all this in. I have to talk to somebody. So they knew that I had a small core group of moms that I prayed with and talked with, and they knew that those moms cared about them just as much as they cared about their own kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mindy, have you been lonely?
I have. I am. I very much what Julie said resonates with me. The 1,000,001 questions. When your kid does something great, it's really nice to be able to look to yourself and say, oh, that's because I was consistent with discipline and I was consistent with, making this a big deal. Well, then when something bad goes happen, you have even more questions. You go back to, oh, I should have done that differently. I should have kept my child from doing this or from being friends with that person or from, what did I do wrong? You question yourself, you question your child. You think, well, maybe there's something wrong with the child.
Mm-hmm.
You question your spouse. Oh, I bet it's my spouse's fault. Like, I'm sure it's his fault. We lived in a different school district. If I had paid for Christian school, if I had just homeschooled, maybe my child would not be struggling with this. You question your church. If that youth leader would have just done something different, if they had gone to the beach instead of the wilderness for youth camp, maybe my kid would have gone,
Right.
You really do. It seems it's so laughable and it's so nonsensical, but it is all the things that go through my mind when my child makes a bad decision in my eyes. Doesn't choose the path I think they need to take, is stuck on some behavior that is so harmful to them. It is. I question everything.
Well, because we want A plus B to equal C.
Yes.
We want, we do this and then they do that and then they turn out like this. And, we kind of model it. Maybe it worked with our first child. It doesn't work with our second, or maybe it worked with our friend's child and we really respect them, but it's not doing anything for our own child,
Yeah, I love a good formula too. It's like,
yes,
that's the way I operate. Like, don't you just wish that it worked the same with every child?
Yes.
And you could just know ahead of time that you're doing the right thing. But yeah, I think we all question. I thought it was just a homeschool mom thing because I think all homeschool moms question, am I messing my kid up? Am I doing the right thing?
It is definitely a universal thing. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the times that I've been lonely, and I still have 3 teens in the house. And it's amazing how lonely you can feel even with 3 teens in the house. Like, a lot of the times my husband's traveling and it's me, my 2 sophomores, and my junior at home. You'd think that, there'd be lots of people to talk to, but, not everyone wants to talk to their mom as much as we don't want to admit that.
No way.
I think it's so hard when you hit those teen years and you start to see those closed bedroom doors and you hear their very mumbled responses to you, where you used to pick them up and they'd talk your ear off about whatever had happened. And now you're like pulling teeth just to get 3 out of their mouths, when they come back from a weekend away or something. I mean, you just can't get anything. It's always hurtful, like when you go over to hug them and they do the thing with their shoulders where it's, Mom, it's just, they can't decide if they would like to be hugged or not to be hugged. But you still know that they need that. They still need those hugs, but maybe they're not
I think that's a real danger, is to think that because you're not getting that feedback and because they don't appear to want to talk to you, that you're not needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're probably more needed. Like, just your presence is really, really important, but you're just not getting that feedback at that time.
Right.
And again, our teens are not consistent with that. Like, sometimes they'll be all excited to hug you and other times they don't. And you're like, okay, well, you try to kind of, watch your kid, but it's never consistent.
No, it's not consistent. And I don't know about you guys, but like in my mind, I flash back to the 3-year-old or the 8-year-old. And then I'm looking at the 15-year-old and I'm like, are they still in there? Is that still the same kid? Because they can look and sound and feel so different in their relationship with you sometimes.
Right.
And it's also really lonely when you feel the judgment, or you think you feel the judgment of your parenting choices from family and friends. And you can just sense that they don't agree. And you're already probably feeling pretty insecure in what you're picking or choosing or allowing them to do anyways. And then that can just send me into a tailspin.
Right. And that's where as a mom, that's where it becomes lonely, because then I don't let people in. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to tell them the truth. I don't want to have those conversations because I'm struggling enough by myself. I don't need to deal with your baggage too for my own kid.
Yeah, in that case, it
And
just adds more problems, I feel like.
it does. I don't want to add worry to my already anxious heart. So it's something I feel like I have to, I'm so thankful that I can run to the Lord. It's me and him. Like, you know.
Well, it's hard because you feel like they're wondering, well, why does she let them? Or why doesn't she make them? Or when are they going to do something about X, Y, or Z? And they don't know that you've already fought 3 other battles just to get to the point that you are today, or that you've decided to compromise on this because you're holding the line on something else. It's so easy for us to judge other people.
Yeah, and that's something I'd like to say, kind of being on the other side of it, is to just remind moms that coming alongside and watching your kid transition into adulthood is a process. And the key word is process. That, you know, just like we wouldn't want to be judged by someone looking at one specific day, week, month, or phase of our life, we can't do that to our kids. They're not going to stay in this phase for very long. And even though sometimes it's a painful process and there's a lot of struggles, just like any good thing in life, they're born out of struggles. Like, this is not the end. It's just part of the process. And that is a whole lot easier to say and to see when you're on the other side. But just know that you will get there. And those people don't stay the same. And I know that I just projected bad behaviors and things way too far into adulthood that shouldn't have been. They were phases. And I'm not saying to minimize or ignore them, but to just not project them too far into the future.
Right.
Very timely encouragement, Julie.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the specific fears or failures that you experienced that you would have felt better if you would have known that other people were experiencing them too? Like, what do you wish that other moms had told you about the teen years?
So the college journey, or even the life after high school journey, can be very anxious because each of our kids is so different, and that path is so different for each family, each child in the family. You know, if you see a friend post a picture of their child that's gotten a full ride scholarship to an amazing school, like, already you're like, how did they do that? But you don't hear the struggle. You don't see the hard work, the years of late nights of hard work, the application process. How are we going to pay for it? Like, you're not in those conversations. And so that was something that I thought, how do you get there? You know, and even though I had a kid already there, even with my second child, it's like, you start all over again. Sibling rivalry. Dealing with teenagers in your house with sibling rivalry is no fun at all.
No.
It's very difficult. How to handle their vehicle, the expense of the car, the insurance, the maintenance of the car. There are not like just rules out there for you to follow. I would love if there were just an easy set of rules. This is what you do for this situation. These things can be debilitating. Some of your conversations with your teen, and then they're inconsistent because it's a very emotional time for them, which means, and it's an emotional time for you as well. And so one minute you could have a really awful conversation with your teen. You question everything. Your world is ending. And then like 30 minutes later, they're fine. They've moved on. And something happens and you find out they've gotten something wonderful in your life and you have all this hope again. I just feel like there's really high highs, there's really low lows, and it's really hard to, especially with your first child going through it, it's really hard to find a balance.
For sure. I think that if someone would have said they're going to save their worst behavior for you, they tell you this about toddlers, preschoolers, everybody, you know, they're going to save their worst behavior for you. But you think maybe they're going to outgrow it in the teenage years. But it's hard when you see other teens like out in the world being responsible and polite and nice with their families. And then it's hard for you to imagine that, hey, they might be beasts at home too. Or that parent and child who looks so happy in that moment might have actually fought before they walked out the door. Like, you don't really get to see that. And I wish that someone would have just been more honest with like, hey, even if they tell you they think lying's okay now, that doesn't mean they're going to think lying's okay 10 years from now. Even if they are telling you that they cheat in this school, on these tests every week, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to cheat on their taxes when they're 30. Like, I think just,
Right.
being honest about some of the things that kids do that they tell themselves is okay now doesn't mean that they're setting themselves up for a life of
Mm.
crime and, jail time.
Prison time.
I know. Because sometimes they will say things that go against what you feel like you've taught them. And
Mhm.
you have no control over whether or not they're going to actually do that. And they
Yeah.
may do that. And, maybe they'll get in trouble for doing that. And you can urge them not to do that. Like, that doesn't sound like a good plan. But ultimately, they leave your house and go out into the world, and you don't know what they're doing. They will act like they hate their family. Like, you guys are the worst people ever. Their siblings are the worst people ever. How did they ever end up with these people? And that, too, will change. Like, there's just a lot of things that if people were more honest saying, oh, yeah, 5 years ago, so-and-so was doing those things, I think we could feel better.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's what I would say is, Mindy, when you mentioned sibling rivalry, that was probably my biggest concern is I felt like our kids fought all the time. And I thought I could control that, or I should be able to.
Mhm.
And I actually got some advice from a mom, and it was the most hurtful advice I think I've ever gotten. I never forgot it because I asked her, she had 7 children, and I asked her how she dealt with sibling rivalry, and she said, "Oh, we don't allow it." And I thought, what does that
Well,
even mean? Like, I don't, she goes, we don't have a problem with it because we don't allow it. And I just struggled for years with that because I thought, well, that meant it was up to me. Like, it was because of her that she didn't have sibling rivalry,
Yeah.
and it must just be that her kids got along,
Mhm.
or she was lying about it. Most likely, probably that was the case. But that was just such harmful advice that I thought, I never want to give anybody advice like that.
Right.
And I mentioned my other group a small group that I prayed with and met with weekly, and we shared a lot of struggles. And I kept a prayer journal during that time, and I found it a few weeks ago and was just flipping through it. And like, a lot of these kids are grown and flown now, but I was looking back at the things that we were praying over, and they were serious things like kids doubting their faith, real character issues, like lying and things like that. And even pornography and lack of motivation in school, having the wrong friends, bad dating relationships, depression, anxiety. And I would say that none of those kids are still in those struggles, and that doesn't define them today. And
Mm.
that's just so encouraging to see that, like, tangible. I can see it written down. These were real things that we talked about, and they've moved on. It doesn't define them. They're not in prison. They're not in bad relationships. They have jobs,
Right. Yeah.
It's just really, it's encouraging to be on the other side.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think when we're in it, even if I can see that I have 2 older kids that have passed through it, when I'm in it with my 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I still get that apprehension because maybe they'll be the ones that don't come out of it. But
Right.
we just have to remind ourselves that almost all kids do, and we just need to keep on being consistent and doing what we can.
Right.
Have you guys felt like parenting teens has gotten easier with subsequent kids?
I think that things got better because it got easier to see what hills were worth dying on, what battles were worth fighting. I don't
Mhm.
really have any specifics here that got easier, but just that with your firstborn, everything was a hill to die on. Everything was important. Every battle was important. And you just learn and figure out that, which ones are and which ones aren't. That just comes with experience. And
Mhm.
it just got easier to let them make their own decisions earlier, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it got easier to let them go. Molly, I apologize for you being the firstborn.
Oh,
But I think the older
yeah.
kids look at it like we're weak in our parenting, but it's not that. You grow and change too with them
Right.
Right.
as
Right.
I
parents.
totally agree with that. I feel like one of the best things that's happened now that I almost have 2 out of the house is just knowing to not react right away to certain
Mhm.
words, moods, or behaviors. I don't react as quickly. Teens are still kids. Unfortunately, they can just hurt you so much more, I feel like.
Mhm.
But also just remember it's okay to still say no. I feel more confident in saying no to my teens. I'm not as afraid of them, if I could put it that way, maybe. I'm not as afraid to take the keys when I need to take the keys, check their phone when I need to check their phone. I'm unapologetic about loving them hard, loving them passionately. And so it's okay for me to make them spend time with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not as hurt as quickly because I know that the mood will change, the attitude will lift. And the things that are sure will still be sure. The things that are true will still be true. But also, I think I've enjoyed the freedoms of having a teenager more because I'm not as worried, I guess, with my subsequent children. And so it's given me a freedom to really enjoy them as teenagers more. So as much as I'm more confident in being able to be firm in my parenting and in my love for them, I can also be more free in my fun, loving self, loving them at the age that they are, letting them drive me around and playing loud music and dancing in the car and, just things like that. And so the development of a parent with multiple teenagers is pretty tremendous. So if you can figure out a couple of things, I think it helps along the way.
Yeah. It definitely, you definitely get better. And like Julie said, is true. Your older kids comment and judge. Sometimes they're some of the loudest, judgiest voices. You would have never let me do that. Blah, blah,
That's
blah.
right. That's right.
They don't understand that you've learned along the way too.
Yeah, it's not that you're giving up. That's what it looks like to them.
Right.
Like, you've just given up. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Even our son Grant, like he's just taken it upon himself. He's like, I'm about to leave the house. He's telling Jacob and Nathan, I'm about to leave the house and we only have so much longer left together. So you need to know these things. And I'm like, okay, so who are we? Like, because the parents are still here. Like, we've not just given your brothers over.
Right.
He feels so responsible to parent his brothers. And I'm like, just be his brother.
Right. So what advice would you guys give to moms struggling in some of these areas? Is there an area that you feel like you struggled in that now you would say you learned something and you could share it with others?
I would just say that kids are going to struggle, some more than others and some less than others, and that we just need to be there to encourage them along the way and love them whether they fail or succeed. To not see our job as fixing their problems, but to just be there, like knowing that the problems are there, the struggles are there, and it's not because of anything we did, but what can we do to come alongside them and encourage them? Whether it's just a helping hand, a shoulder to cry on, a safe place, like those are the things we can do to make it better. And that's probably the hardest part when you're transitioning from the childhood years to teen years is we were so good at orchestrating their little worlds, like arranging the play dates when they were lonely or talking to that mom whose kid hurt our kid or just pulling them out of a bad situation. And all that goes away in the teen years,
Right.
You have to just let it play out. And it's more about how we react versus controlling and manipulating those situations because it's just not possible anymore.
Something that Bryce and I have noticed is that, especially with teens and then moving into young adults and trying to, get your kids to kind of move out of the house well, like our purpose as parents is to raise and let our kids go. And so you do kind of move from a directing their life to an influencing their life. And so as our kids got older, and this is important, as they built trust and kept that trust, we really did let the rein out with them on purpose. We tried to, I think I would put it this way, teach your kids to think. Instead of just telling them what to do, especially if you've got a really good relationship with them, those conversations at midnight that you're having, when your kid is saying, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? It's more of like asking questions, helping them think through the situation, helping them think through that relationship to help them figure out what to do, to help them figure out how to make decisions as an adult. And there were several times that both of our older kids have said, just tell me what to do. It would be so much easier. And both Bryce and I hold back and we say, look, you can ask us any questions you want. We're going to talk to you through this, but we need you to make the ultimate decision because you need to know that you know how to make decisions well with people and with situations.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to just give advice and then let them pick. That's a really hard situation to deal with in all things, really. But we have to practice in the teen years because eventually they're going to make all their own decisions. And it's a way for us to learn to give up that control.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what about some specific things like what do you do if your teenager just doesn't really care about school? Mindy, I know you've dealt with that this year.
All right. This has been really hard and it's been a struggle for years. I think that I would say, how bad is the situation? Are we talking about failing grades or are we talking about a B or a C when your kid could get an A? Right. Because those are, a parent might feel just as strongly about a B or C as they do about a kid failing. And so honestly, Bryce and I ended up taking the approach with natural consequences. And what I mean by that, I would help enforce maybe some restrictions if it were failing, right? If it were a failing class, then I would definitely enforce some restrictions, outside activities, friend time, things like that. But your kid, like somehow you have to put the weight on the kid's shoulders. And there was actually a situation that we dealt with where Bryce and I met with our child and all of the child's teachers in one room. And it was, I'll call it an intervention. And basically everyone in that room loved my child. Everyone. Bryce and I had to ask the teachers to allow natural consequences to happen to our child so that they could feel the effects of what they were doing. Because maybe you make your child do that assignment at home or that report, and then maybe they just don't even turn it in. You're not going to physically be at the school to make your child do the right thing. So somehow they have to do it, right? And you're not there. Yeah. And so our child, we had to beg the teachers to give the bad grade, give the 0. We need this child to fail while they're at home and learn this lesson because to me, it was an issue with integrity. It was a lack of integrity to the behavior that we were seeing with the school, and the teachers had a hard time with it, but we were on board. And so thankfully we did see a turnaround in that situation, but it's tough. Yeah. And unfortunately, this can cause, any of these issues can cause conflict in your marriage. And I say that because even with this particular issue, that it took Bryce and I a couple of years to figure out how to get on the same page. Do we both agree with the consequence? It took a lot for us to get into a room and both agree and say, please let our child fail. Right. We are in agreement. We feel like this is the best for this child with their character. For the long run, we think this is the best course of action, but we did not start there. Bryce and I didn't. And so with anything, goodness, if you can be on the same page as your spouse, that's when you've hit like gold. That's when I feel like you're going to make strides with your child, is if your child sees a united effort from the parents in the home. Well, and it's not like you said to yourself one day, I'm just going to let my kid fail, because we don't start out there. I think we start out trying to give every opportunity, every help. Nobody starts out saying, no, that's all I can do. Now they're just like, it's a work in progress. So, we're not just going to do that. That might not come till they're a junior and you've tried for 3 years and they still won't do it, Right. I know you've kind of dealt with that too, Julie.
Yeah. And I think I agree with all that you guys have said. I think it's really important to know your child that you're dealing with and know yourself, because John has had a pretty clear, he's pretty confident in the way he wants to deal with these kind of situations. Whereas I'm always like, oh, do I need to do this, or maybe we should try this? And it's usually something really stern and harsh, And then he'll say, you're not going to do that. He says, we're not sink or swim parents, Julie. We're just not. Don't try that approach, because we're not going to follow through. That's not who we are. And I thought that is so true. I tend to want to try something that I know in my heart I'm not going to be able to really follow through with. And I don't think our kids' personalities would have necessarily benefited or responded to that either. I think it was a combination of knowing ourselves and knowing them. And I had a child who was not highly motivated in school. And it wasn't that he was failing out. It was just I felt like he wasn't giving it his best.
Right.
And that wasn't our personalities at all. So it was very hard to understand. I just decided I was going to push and double check and encourage and expect them to do this work because boys' brains just aren't fully developed until they're almost 25 years old. So I thought, I don't want him to make this decision that, that it could affect college or later in life now when he's just totally not prepared to really make a good decision on that. So, and I think he appreciated that because he realized he wasn't internally motivated, but could be externally motivated. If that makes sense. Like it worked for us because he responded to it. Now I know that wouldn't work in every situation, but it did in our case. So I think it was just helpful to know him and know us.
Yeah, I feel like if there's something you can do to sweeten the pot to make them succeed, do it.
Right.
I mean, do all you can do. If you know of something that motivates them,
yeah,
go ahead.
Amen, sister.
There's no shame in that.
I would have never bribed my toddler because I'm like, oh, that's going to develop bad behavior. But with a teenager, bribery, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think of different ways that we might put our foot down and give latitude on a daily basis. Like I was trying to think of, we've talked a lot about compromising. Like things that I compromise on daily. What are some things that you guys felt like you were constantly moving the line around? Like I constantly feel like I'm moving the line around how they're speaking to me, how they're speaking to each other. Like some people, they might have this rule in their house, you will address me as such and such in this tone every single time, and I better not hear it any other way. Or you will address each other as blah, blah, blah. But I just feel like I have a lot of latitude. Like sometimes I can take a snarkier tone of voice because I know that they're dealing with something, or I can handle some extra biting because I know they're working through something. And other times I'll feel like, okay, it's just been too much. Like I feel like I'm constantly moving the line on those things.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I was constantly putting down and then backing off, because I realized it was too extreme. Like you'll never watch TV again. Well, that's a punishment for me.
Right.
Like sometimes my punishments were so extreme that they were too hard for me to implement. So especially with sibling rivalry, it was like, this is not acceptable. And then it was like, you just have to give up on certain days, knowing it's going to happen.
Right. I think I got to the point with the sibling rivalry one time, like, just go outside. I just don't want to hear you. Like you are messing. I'm trying to watch. I could be trying to watch TV or I'm trying to read this article and like, I'm just over it. And when they saw I didn't care, it was almost like it took the fight out of both of them. It's like they were trying to rile me up. And I'm like, what is your problem?
It's no fun to fight if there's not an audience.
I know. Go outside. And it's like, well, what's the fun of that? Go outside. Mom can't even react.
Yeah.
How about clothing? I feel like I am constantly having to adjust my expectations for clothing. Like my son, I would maybe like him to put a little more effort in for different places that we go. And I feel like people are saying, why doesn't she make him do X, Y, or Z? But it's like, don't know if I feel like fighting that battle today. Or my girls, I'm like, we're not going to wear this. All right, fine. We'll wear that, but we'll require this. Okay. All right. Well, fine, wear that, but you must do this. Like it's always moving.
Right. Well, you said clothes, and I was thinking of the clothes that end up on my floor and the piles of shoes. And we have specific places for these things. There is a hamper in the bathroom where your clothes go when you take them off, and they're dirty, yet I don't know how they end up all down the hall, all around the hamper. That was where my mind went when you mentioned clothes was, can you please pick up after yourself? Or can you please, I've been telling you for like 15 years to put your dishes in the dishwasher. Do not leave them in the sink. I am not your maid, right? And there's sometimes I really could yell about that and like, have you not heard me? Like seriously.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed with having older kids that have moved out, and you tell me if this is true, Julie, but they seem to care about their own spaces more than they ever cared about my space.
Oh, for sure. They keep it so neat. And I know I did too. My room was a total wreck when I was
me
growing up.
too.
And my mom let it be that way. And I appreciate that because once it became my room, my house, I totally cared. It wasn't like I necessarily had to be trained in that and I was never going to figure this out. When you want to do it, you learn how to do it.
Right. Yeah, I sort of feel that way about rooms. Like, I don't really care if the room is perfectly clean as long as there's not like food that's attracting animals and like terrible, terrible stenches.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sleeping in there if that's how you like it.
Right. If my son wants to have his closet on the floor, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He has piles around the room on the floor that are clean. He doesn't use his drawers or his closet. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Now, I would not have been fine with that with my firstborn, though. Molly would have not. And then yet she was really neat. She probably would have even tried that. But, that just would have been, I did expect neatness and her bed made and all that, with the firstborn. But now I don't even go in David's room except to change the sheets.
I feel like as teenagers, we say, you know what, you're not going to live in that room forever. In a few years, you'll be on your own and I won't have to deal with it. And do I want to have this fight every day? There's already so many other things to fight with the teenagers about. That's just not on my list of things to worry about.
Yeah. Until we have company coming over that might see it. Or like on my whim, like I might say, well, this morning I just told all the boys, I'm washing your sheets today. Just get them off your beds. I didn't ask, do your sheets need to be washed? Just get your sheets off, bring them to the laundry room. And then a lot of times, probably every other Saturday, I will still make lists for my boys of cleaning items they need to take care of. And it's typically their bathroom, their toilet, their rooms. I make them vacuum their rooms, just things like that. So it's like all chaos until I finally say, okay, you need to go do it. And then they go do it. But
sometimes you reach a breaking point and it's usually with David's bathroom. And I'm like, okay, today it gets cleaned and I make him do it. And he's usually agreeable to it, but that's probably like once a month.
Julie, I totally gave in yesterday and I went and I cleaned a boy's bathroom because I was just going to the toilet bowl, but then that went to like the outside of the toilet, then the sink, then the outside of the cabinet, and then the floor around the toilet. And then I had to change a light bulb and like the mirror. And I just wiped every surface. And so every once in a while, I really will break down and do a deep clean so that they can at least try to keep it clean. But it always gets to a point of no return.
And sometimes it just needs a mom's touch.
It does.
Plus, Mindy, you're trying to protect your own investment. Like you do pay a mortgage on this property and someday you might have to sell it and you don't want it to just be destroyed.
It's true.
And you don't want it condemned by the health department should they come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If bugs are attracted to their room, that's right down the hall from my room.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about making your kids spend time with you and your family. How did you guys I think this is one of the things we all want. And did you have kind of a way of maybe making it fun and not just like a big chore?
Again, bribery works wonders. I feel like if you can somehow come up with a place they enjoy to eat or a dessert they like to have and throw that into the mix, or okay, you want to go by the store and get a new like workout clothes or something. Okay, well, we'll go there together and then we'll go to dinner together. Oh, I don't want to go to dinner. Oh, no, like I'll take you to the store, but you got to go to dinner with me.
Yeah, maybe combine it with something that they really enjoy doing.
Yes.
Sometimes you just have to flat out say, we're going to this movie together, or
that's right.
Your grandparents are coming over on Friday night and you're going to be home. I think there's like a line of being respectful of activities that they like to do. Like I know my girls like to go to all the football games, so I'm not going to plan Friday night activities in the fall because I'm just setting myself up for failure. But I might say, hey, when other times during the weekend do you have free that we could do something?
I also feel like in this situation with actually most of these items, these issues that you deal with, respect breeds respect. And I think that you want to try to present the type of relationship and tone of voice and things like that towards your child that you will expect from them. And this is a learning opportunity for them. So they won't always follow this, but I think the more you're consistent with keeping like a level tone of voice, with making certain demands, but also respecting, like you, Marie, they have things they want to do. And I think when they see that, they see, oh yeah, mom and dad, it's not like they're trying to ruin my life and keep me from my friends all the time. They're just saying, hey, I appreciate that you want to spend time with your friend. I want to spend time with you. It's good to talk to them. And it might be a different time every week. It might be a different time every month. But if you're both working towards it, it goes a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Julie, isn't it such a thrill now that your kids are older when they want to spend time with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they want to spend time with each other. They're not fighting anymore. They get along. They call each other. They text each other. They want to visit each other. And we have some friends that we spend a lot of time with, and they kind of lived through the sibling rivalry that we had. And they'll still comment like, boy, did you ever think your boys would be friends?
Right.
Yeah. They saw the transformation, because when they see it happening now, they're like, wow, I don't know that I ever could have predicted that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just encouraging, or advice to parents of teens, is to just keep fighting the good fight on that. Don't just say, oh, they're never going to be friends. Keep providing opportunities for them to spend time together. Keep urging those connections, even when it seems like they might not be choosing that for themselves, because I think they will get to the point where they do choose it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
I can't remember where I saw this, but like somebody said that they even offered to pay for things like trips, maybe that siblings wanted to take together, if they would just go and do it together, or different activities they wanted to do just to make it easier for their kids to spend time together. This was even when they were like in college, just to make it so that, remove at least the financial barrier part of it, make it easy for them to spend time together, because the more time they spend together, hopefully that relationship will develop.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Was there anything else that you felt like you wanted to share with parents of teens that would be encouraging if they're feeling like, I'm in the lonely years and I don't know if I'm going to make it?
One of my sons experienced some anxiety and depression at the end of high school. And I just remember feeling so bad that I didn't see it earlier. Mm-hmm. And, we all know that hindsight is 20/20. And looking back, there were signs that I think I saw, but I minimized because I didn't want to see them. And not because I didn't care about it. Heavens no, that was not it. But I just hoped he'd get better on his own. And I think with talking with other moms, this is really a common issue, like not wanting to see things in our own kids, or thinking, oh, my kid is different. They can get through this on their own, or with some help, from me. Or with me, there was a real concern of not wanting to label my child with something that I thought might follow him, like depression.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. If I didn't have to, like if we didn't have to address it professionally, this won't stick with him or follow him. And I didn't want to tell him he was depressed, like had a mental illness. Sounds so horrible. Right. And that might make it worse. Like I thought, then he'll think worse of himself and it'll just get worse. And I just didn't want to see him have to go through the process of what it would take to have him get better. But I would like to say on the other side now is that if you see those signs, that is not a helpful way to look at it. Like, get the help that you need. Coming through that, I just see like how much my child grew and matured through that, and good came out of it by letting him go through that, not trying to prevent it, because I couldn't prevent the problem. I was just preventing the solution. By going through some counseling, he was given tools that he can use the rest of his life to help combat anxiety and depression should it ever, resurface. And, during that time, his counselor recommended that he take up a hobby that he enjoyed. And so he started playing the guitar. And this was, after high school. So it's pretty late in life, and he's really pretty good at it. And he enjoys playing just for himself. He's not like in a band performing or anything, but he really enjoys it. And about 2 years on the other side of this, he came up to me one day and said, Mom, if I hadn't been depressed, I probably would have never played the guitar. And he was so glad that he did. And that just really meant a lot to me to hear him say that, because it showed me that he had learned and grown out of that experience, and it didn't hurt him to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So the important thing, there is how we react, because the pressure, the anxiety is going to be there if it's going to be there,
Right.
But how we handle it is so important. And just not to minimize things in your kids thinking, oh, that can't be true of them. Because that's just going to hurt.
Well, I love that you shared that, because it can feel like an ending. And you mentioned, being concerned about labeling, especially at that time in your child's life. That's their launching point. Like, you're thinking this is the beginning of the rest of their lives, end of high school, after high school. But at the same time, I love that you're able to share that it gave him tools to do better at life. It gave him more life, a better life, because you went ahead and went through that with him. So I'm so thankful you shared that.
Yeah. And they say that anxiety in teens is like so prevalent.
Right. Yeah. And it came at the end of high school, and his was related to a lot of what he was going to do with the rest of his life. Like just that fear and that anxiety and the unknown. And, he likes to know things. He likes to plan things and know the result and the outcome.
Right.
And I think, he's better with the uncertainty of the world now because of that. He understands that you can't know all those things, and it's helped him in making some decisions,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a major pressure point for kids and parents, is just the pressure put on children to know what they want to do and to know how they're going to get there when they're a senior in high school. Like that is unrealistic.
And some kids handle that fine, and the others don't.
That's right.
All right, listeners. Well, we hope that this was helpful for you today. If you've been feeling a little lonely as a parent of teenagers, or feeling like, ooh, I might look like I'm okay on the outside, but I'm really not. Know that you're not alone. And if there are any specific topics or things that you're dealing with that you'd like to hear us address at some point, feel free to shoot us an email at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. All right, you guys, let's move into I'm a Fan. Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of the Costco chicken pot pie.
Have you ever had
it?
I always hear such great things about this.
Yes, it's in my fridge right now.
Oh, well, I don't usually buy it for our family because it looks like it would feed an army, and
it is big.
That's why it's in my fridge right now.
Well, I feed 15 to 20 college students every Tuesday night, and I just added that into the rotation. I bought one of the Costco chicken pot pies and one of the shepherd pies, and they're huge, and both of them were devoured. So it was so good. The crust is so good. So if you need to feed a crowd, I recommend it.
I've heard great things about that, and it's got that pretty lattice work crust, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. It's very hearty.
It is.
Like, I love the big chunks of chicken in it, and it's full of vegetables. So it's just a really good one.
Yeah. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I really like this particular product because it's over the counter. It is for the aging woman like myself who might struggle with a little bit of acne here and there, but also are concerned about, the onset of wrinkles. But this is an over-counter product. It's called Differin. It has adapalene in it. You can get it at Walmart, Target, Ulta, wherever. I just really like it. It's great. Your teenager can even use this product. It's just one of the best acne treatments, but also the wrinkle preventative. It's something that I do put on my skin every night.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. I think actually that might have been something that the dermatologist has prescribed in the past. So that name sounds really familiar.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of another Costco product this week, Julie. I guess we both were on the same page.
Oh, nice.
And if anyone wants to go back and listen to our Costco episode, it was number 17, and you can get a lot of great ideas of things that you can buy at Costco and Sam's Club. But I'm a fan of the Costco sheets. And I think in that episode, I say that I'm a fan of the Sam's Club sheets. And I am, and I have been in the past. But this time I had ordered sheets from Costco, and it's their Charisma brand. And they're 400 thread count, which doesn't sound like much, but they're actually super soft, like almost like a silky feeling, even though it says they're 100% cotton. And they have something called wrinkle shield on them, so they're not like real wrinkly. In the set, it includes 1 flat sheet, 1 fitted sheet, and 4 pillowcases, which I always think is a benefit too. So you may want to check out the Costco sheets if you remember the Charisma brand. They're just really silky and nice, and I may even like them better than I liked my Sam's Club sheets, which I had swore by previously.
Awesome. All right.
All right, listeners, so if you need some new sheets, check those out from Costco, or if you need a pot pie, you definitely want to check out Costco too. Listen to our episode number 17, where we did go into great detail on different things you can buy there. Come and find us on Instagram, Midlife Matters Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to comment or send us messages on anything you'd like to hear us talk about. And we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds great.
All right,
Bye,
we'll talk
girls.
to you later. We're so happy you joined us today. If you'd like to get the show notes for today's episode, please email your name and address to midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com and write show notes in the subject line. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.